Hello everyone, my name is Ashutosh Mishra and I welcome you all to my channel Books and Fun. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 5 books that I love the most in this year, because I have read around 45 to 46 books this year, and they all have been really good recommendations. I got them from some pages that I follow on Instagram, some Goodreads recommendations, or some booktuber recommendations also. Fifth book that I wanted to present to you, or kind of recommend to you, is Kings of Wild by Nicholas Ames. Now, Kings of the Wild is a fantasy book, and it's set, like, it's written in a very humorous form. There are monsters, there is revenge, there is a sense of dread and bloodshed and wars and battles and everything like that. And there's a sense of camaraderie in this book, because when we see fantasy books like Game of Thrones, or fantasy books like I can say Poppy War, is the one that comes into my mind when we say that these books have certain level of individual actions in these things. Like, there are certain characters that follow their own route. In Poppy War, like, Rin follows her own route. In Game of Thrones, you can see several characters follow their own set of path to reach a certain level of destination, or achieve some common goals or something like that. But when it comes to Kings of the Wild, there's like a camaraderie. There's a band of people, and this band consists of Clay, then Gabriel, and I don't remember the characters' names properly, but these are the characters that I can say that have a certain level of understanding between them. There's humor, a lot of humor in this book, because when we read fantasy books, we have like whatever fantasy books that I've read and up until now, before reading Kings of the Wild, I've noticed that some are grim dark, some follow a sense of political or religious patterns. Some take advances or derivatives from certain historical backgrounds, such as Norse mythology, or English history, like Britain's history, European history, or medieval history, I can say. So these are the takeaways, or these are the like derivative points for these books that I mentioned before. Like, Game of Thrones is based on the English history backgrounds, or Irish backgrounds. The other book that I read, which I'm going to mention in this top 5, is based on the Norse mythology. So these are the derivatives that these books are derived from. But when it comes to Kings of the Wild, it feels like, like, obviously it didn't give me that much of a sense, like, of any historical background, because I don't have a much stronger hold on history as such. But I can say that it's really good book. It's humorous. It's like excellently humorous, I can say, because as I said before, like Game of Thrones and like Poppy War, and books like The Witcher, these are, or I can say the books of Joe Abercrombie, which is The Blade itself, the first Law trilogy. These are mostly focused on grim dark elements of the book, elements of the story. But that is not the case with Kings of the Wild, because Kings of the Wild is mostly humorous. There are very great elements of camaraderie in this book. Like, there's friendship of the band. There's a sense of decisions, and decision making, leadership, and all of that. And when we so the story is basically the simple, like, one friend is like the character of Clay Slowhand, and he has this, that the big ass shield that you can see on the cover of the book also. So there's this sense of camaraderie between them, and they have to achieve a certain goal, which is to rescue, or kind of like bring back Clay's friend is, and they want to bring her, daughter, which is Rose, and she is in a very, kind of, I can say, a very dangerous place, and they want to bring her back. Now, I won't be mentioning the name of the places or and all, because I think you will be understanding those things pretty much more in the book while reading the book. But yeah, this book is really good as a fantasy standalone. There is the second book also, The Bloody Rose, but I think so it isn't properly based on the first book. So yeah, so you can see this book as a standalone, and that makes it really good, because I think even if the author continued this series, I don't think that it would be that much good as the first book. So yeah, that was the fifth book that I mentioned, The Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. So let's move on to the fourth book in the list. Now the fourth book that I'm going to mention is On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous, written by Ocean Vuong. And Ocean Vuong's writing style is the best that I've read in this year. And I can say it out very easily because Ocean Vuong was previously a poet. Not was, I mean, he is obviously a poem also right now. But it was his first debut book, On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous, as he shifted from being a poet to also being an author. So these have a certain level of parallel writing style between both of these things. So when we read a poem, we feel a sense of rhymings, we feel a sense of beauty in it, because poems are just as the books. The poems are also the best thing ever. They give you a meaningful takeaway in just short 3 to 4 lines, or sometimes 10 to 15 lines or something like that. And they have that power. And when you have the power of expressing something in a very short time, it really becomes the most impactful thing ever. When we have this, like, you can say it as a canvas, and when we have a canvas, we have limitations, and when we have limitations in certain form of art, that thing becomes really amazing and impactful and effective in some sort of. But when you just enlarge it, when you just increase its boundaries, the problem starts there, because now you have totally diminished its value. So I think limitations, boundaries, flaws, these things reflect more and more strengths of you in some way. And obviously I didn't intend it to be like that, but as we have just came close to that point, I can say that Ocean Vuong's writing style brings that properly. There are flaws in the story, there are flaws in the plot also, because there's not a certain plot that's going on. It's just a kind of letter from a son to his mother, who cannot read, and he wants to express all of those things, all of the experiences that he had, to his mother. And frequently in the book you can see the author has mentioned that he wasn't good at writing English, but then you see that writing style and you can say that there's a progress there, there's an immense amount of progress there. And there are instances where he expresses about his experience, his the whole family's experiences during Vietnam War. So there's some parallels of historical fiction also there, and you can also get a glimpse of what sense of times those people were going through. There are certain things that happen haphazardly. There's no certain level of time distribution or timeline that goes on in a linear way, and that's the beauty of it, I think, because that's written by a poet. And when you see a writing style, when you see the way that author expresses the feelings, the way he expresses his experiences through those times, it's really beautiful, it's really vivid in sort of way. It's at some points it provokes you to think about certain things. Then there's a part of LGBT where the main character falls in love with a gay friend, and I mean, it's not a gay friend, but there's certain level of gay relationship that develops between among both of them. Between both of them, and that's also a very amazing part in the book, because it expresses every thing that happens between them in a very realistic manner. And I think that's what's needed in today's times, because you have flashy words, you have fancy words, and Ocean Vuong's writing style is not that much of a fancy writing style. There will be normal words, there will be normal phrases. They don't have any extravagant words or synonyms that or implications of those things. So yeah, so that was all. And you should really read this book. It is really amazing, it's really beautifully written, as I've said multiple times before. But I think when you want to express certain things, I think 1 or 2 words are enough for that to happen. You don't have to have a great amount of vocabulary built up for that thing. So yeah, that was all from the 4th book of my top 5 list. So let's get on with the 3rd book in the list, which is The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. Now, this was my first John Gwynne book. In my Goodreads also there were recommendations like Malice, Valor, which is the Faithful and the Fallen series of his. And Shadow of the Gods was the first book, as I said before, and it's based on Norse mythology. Now, there's a big ass dragon on the cover page, and that's what intrigued me a lot, not his previous works, not the previous works of author, not the reviews that were mentioned about the previous books. The dragon that was on the front page of the book, that intrigued me a lot to know what this story will be, because it's been a long time since I've seen dragons. It's not been a long time, like three or 4 years since 3 years basically, 3 or 2 years basically, when Game of Thrones ended, and that was the end of it. That was the, just the last episode showed you a dragon, and that's it. And then whatever the books I've read after that don't have that much mentions of the dragon. And then that's why I was much more hyped, much more excited about this book's release. And when I read it, it was a good book. It's really good. I can say that there were many great books that I read this year, and this was one of them. So the story follows three people, which is Elva, Orca, and Varg, and they have their certain reasons for them to be moving forward, for them to be having certain amount of goals in their life, certain amount of direction in their life, for their how means simply put, they have to have a meaning in their life to move forward. And that's what happens here, which is, Elva belongs to a noble family. Her family is rich, her family is, as I said, noble. They have this a certain level of respect among the people of the lands of Vigrid. As I said, this is derived from Norse mythology heavily. There are mentions of weapons and locations that are pronounced differently, as they belong, as they have some certain level of resemblance with the Norse mythology. So yeah, that's why there's the names like Elva, Varg, Vigrid, which is the shattered lands of them. So on these shattered lands, there were the historical story follows that there were gods who fought to death, who fought murderous wars, and then left their negative aura on the lands. And this kind of aura has also left people with taints, which is like assumed by other people as some sort of bad luck for the people. And then there are some witches who perform shamanism, or on the similar lines. Like, there's not a mention of shamanism exactly, but it follows the similar kind of activity or process that happens in these people. And when we follow these three people, Elva belongs to a noble family, and she wants to prove her family that she can be of worth, and she has her own set of individual importance, and not she wants to kind of detach from all the fame or all the famous kind of capabilities or capacities that she has been attached with. Then other character that we follow is Varg, which is he has a background where her sister was being murdered by someone. Her sister's name is Troya, and he wants to avenge her death. He wants to avenge her murder, and that's why he is in search of a Sever witch, a witch who can perform the activities of shamanism, and just kind of give him a glimpse of whoever murdered his sister in previous times. So that's a kind of revenge pattern that he wants to follow. That's basically one of the tropes that many fantasy books have to follow, because if there's not a revenge, there's not a story. You have to avenge something. You have to have certain conflicts in your story, and it's like storytelling or book writing 101, conflicts. The other character which I love the most, which is Orca, and that's why I kept her for the last mentioning. Orca's character is totally badass, but obviously it's not expressed clearly in that form, like she's a badass character and all of that. But certain things, like what we say, the environments define us, the actions that we perform in certain environments define us. So that's what defines Orca. Also, she and her family, her husband Thorkel and her son Brekka. So this is a small family that they live in. They live peacefully. Everything goes on properly. Everything's calm and blissful and all of that. And obviously they have a certain level of understanding of the people that they are living amongst. One day what happens is that Brekka is kidnapped, Thorkel is killed. Now this isn't a spoiler, because it happens like just under 100 or 80 pages or something like that, and doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the plot, because the rest of the plot is totally poof. So Brekka gets kidnapped and Thorkel gets murdered. Means her husband gets murdered, and because Orca was somewhere out there on the fields, and when she comes back home, she finds this whole lot of a mess that has happened, and then she wants to avenge you know her husband, and also find her son Rekka, because he's been kidnapped, and so that's why that leads on to her tale. And then so the certain things happen, and at a point at the ending, we meet the convergence point of these three characters. So that's the story of the Shadow of the Gods. That's a kind of a plot of the Shadow of the Gods. Writing style is the best I've read. John Gwynn's books are heavily based on the descriptions of the world building, and that's what's happening here also. And I'm more excited for reading the Faithful and the Fallen series also after this. But yeah, Shadow of the Gods was really good book as an introductory book for the Bloodsworn saga. That's the upcoming book is I think so. It's rumored as Dead Gods Rising, which will be the sequel to the Shadow of the Gods. And the things that happen in the Shadow of the Gods at the ending will really excite you for the things that are going to come up again, in the future. The second book that I loved this year is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, the author of the Martian book, and which was adapted into a movie, where the movie is really good. And obviously, I watched the movie first, but I didn't read the book. And then, out of nowhere, I see on my Goodreads recommendations that Project Hail Mary has been released by the Andy Weir. It's like the best sci-fi that I've read this year, and I think it's the only sci-fi I've read this year. But yeah, it's really good. The writing style is superb because it's first person, and first person books I think are mostly fast paced. They don't have to be fast paced, but they are fast paced because when you listen to the audiobook, you read the book, there's a sense of kind of attachment with the character. You can experience it as an interview. So yeah, Project Hail Mary follows the story of Ryland Grace, who is a professor, a scientific professor or something, a physics professor, who teaches children and all of that. And then out of blue, he is approached by some scientists from NASA that there's this microbe who is eating out the light from sun, like it's eating the sunlight, and that's going to be a major disaster for Earth in the upcoming future. And he is totally surprised by that offer, because he's like, I teach these kids, and out of nowhere you want me to save the world, you want me to save the Earth, like not the world, the Earth. So that thing happens, and then the book starts off as he is on this ship, which is the Project Hail Mary, the name of the ship, and he rises up from a coma, like a long lost coma, and then he bit by bit he gets the experiences. Bit by bit he recalls the things that happened before all of that stuff happened before. He kinds of retraces, he kinds of has a retrospective view, like how the hell did he reach this point. Okay, and then as he reaches a point, we are also moving forward in the current story, and then he meets someone which I don't want to reveal. It's a thing that you have to experience. The audiobook is superb. The narration is really really amazing, and I really want to stress upon that part, because audiobook is superb. There's some special effects, sound effects. Okay, so that will make you more immersive in that book. And yeah, the narration is superb because first person narrations are the best thing. So let's get on with the first book of the top 5 list of 2021, and that's this, which is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Now I'll read out the kind of summary, like the first 2-3 lines, which is: when Rien aced the Kaju, the test to find the most talented students in the Nikara Empire, it was a shock to everyone. That she got into Sinigard, the most elite military school in Nikan, was even more surprising. But surprises aren't always good, And then there's more, like the description, the summary is more elaborately presented here, but I won't be getting into that. Rin's character is really good and really well crafted for a debut novel. And when you will be reading this book, you won't feel like it's a debut novel at all. The writing style is superb. The writing style has it feels flawless at the best. Obviously there are some certain things that felt reluctant towards, because at the start I was feeling, you know, sluggish, and I felt like, I won't be able to complete this book at all. The story starts off pretty slowly, and many won't find that as slow, but I did found it a bit slow, not that much of a problem. And then as you move forward, you get into the lives of the people that were living at those times when the Sino-Japanese War happened, and it kind of has the resemblance of those things. Like here is the mention. So parallels with modern Chinese history resonate deeply and darkly in the blood-soaked epic of orphans and empresses and gods and shamans. So that's one of the review by Daily Mail. You can see here, and that kind of quite properly, gets the gist of the kind of resemblance that this book draws from. And also I can say that, you can see the map also. This is the map. So you can see the provinces like snake, horse, and these are actually derived from the 12 zodiac signs of Chinese culture. So that's the thing. And then she prepares for Kaju. She gets into the synagogue, as I told you through the summary, and then after that she meets people who hate her because of her background. There's racism. You can see that the masters, the teachers also kind of shoo her away because of her backgrounds and stuff like that. But as you move forward, the story gets more and more interesting, because like there's part 2 or 3 parts in this book. As you move on towards the second or third part of the book, the things escalate immensely. Like it's like an exponential graph where the things start off as slow, but then certain things happen, and at the last you'll be just poof. Because at the last I was totally awestruck and surprised by what to think about these things, by the writing style and by the events that happen in the book. At the end you will be confused, and these books make you think about your decisions also. So that was the best thing about this book. And the other best thing about the book that I've mentioned before is this is a debut novel, and it doesn't feel like that at all. So that was all for this video, the top 5 list of 2021 my favorite books. I will be mentioning all the titles in the description below. I will also be mentioning their shopping links, so that you can buy the books from there. So that was all for this video. I hope you liked it, and I will be making more of these. So make sure to like and subscribe to this video, and I hope you are staying safe. Until then, bye.